Yes.
Good afternoon, members of the media. Good afternoon to our citizens of Guyana who are following our Alliance for Change press conference this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to start off by introducing our members of the Alliance for Change and executive members that are with us this afternoon. They include Dr. Vince Adams, who will make a presentation, chair of the Alliance for Change, David Patterson, and who, of course, is here to answer any questions anyone may have. And also Laura George, AFC member and advisor on Indigenous Affairs, and Beverly Alert. Once again, thanks for joining us. And I'd like to start with my presentation on the AFC's position and comments on the European Election Observer Mission report. The Alliance for Change thanks the European Election Observer Mission for its report on the general and regional elections of September 1st, 2025, and for its engagement in the lead up, during, and after the elections. While we continue to examine the report, our preliminary observation is that it addresses many of the deficiencies in the electoral process that the AFC has highlighted over the years. These range from the composition of the Guyana Elections Commission, GCOM, to the bloated voters list, partisan media coverage, and abuse of state resources by the PPP. Not surprisingly, President Ali has criticized the report. This is typical behavior of the PPP. Any report that is critical of their government, they immediately dismiss and seek to discredit. And this is most unfortunate. In functioning democracies, the line separating political campaigning and government business is clear. What the AFC observed, and clearly the European Union Observer Mission would have also observed, was the overwhelming abuse of state resources by ministers and officials of the PPP. President Ali, for example, is said to have traveled to the interior region using state resources some 42 times during the heat of the campaign, and that's between July and August. This abuse of state resources was also highlighted by the Carter Center. The monopolization of state media by the PPP whenever they are in government has long been documented. We have spoken on this ad nauseum. As the EU Elections Monitoring Unit notes, this creates an uneven playing field. Even some privately owned media have moved away from the basic journalistic principles. We take this opportunity, however, to thank Stabroek News, HGP TV, News Source, and a few others for their objective, balanced reporting during the elections. In its summary, the EU Monitoring Unit Elections Monitoring Unit notes that, and I quote, the GCOM structures and decision-making remains heavily influenced by political divisions. Many would recall that the AFC had proposed that the number of commissioners at GCOM be increased to include representatives of civil society. This recommendation by the Alliance for Change has gone unheeded. Like other observer missions to the 2025 elections and the 2020 elections, the European Union report provides helpful recommendations on improving the electoral process and strengthening democracy. Sadly, we have little confidence that any real change would be made. The AFC stands ready to support peaceful public action that would reform our electoral process. Thank you. And Dr. Vince Adams, if we could ask you to make your presentation now.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome to the media.
Hey, I want to address a very serious matter of misinformation and lies habitually being spewed by Alistair Rutledge, the country manager of Exxon, to the Guyanese people, and there seems to be no end in sight. As a matter of fact, he seems to be becoming even more emboldened to misinform the Guyanese public. And why I say this is very important. Oil and gas, as we all know, it impacts the lives of every single Guyanese in a major way. The oil resources and whatever revenues comes into Guyana belongs to the people of Guyana. It doesn't belong to Exxon or the government. It belongs to the people. And it's like having a bank account and you don't know what's in the bank account. You don't know how it's being managed. And that's what's going on. We're not getting any information from the government. And we're not getting, as a matter of fact, we not only are we not getting information, whenever we get information, the information is not truthful or it's being hidden. And the government is not giving us on Mr. Alistair Rutledge. It is not making any difference. And by the way, and this is not anything personal against Mr. Rutledge because, of course, we welcome investors. We've always made that clear. However, we expect our investors to be fair partners, to be truthful, to be transparent, and to at least let us know what is going on with our resources. And his predecessor, Rod Henson, was totally different to Rutledge. Rod Henson, we had a great relationship. Rod Henson was very transparent, very honest. He was tough as nails as a company man, which is expected, but he was always very honest. And most importantly, he respected the authority of the Guyana government, recognizing the relationship that we were the owners of the relationship and they were just our contractors. Um, as you may recall, just a few weeks ago in the Kaichor News, distinguished attorney Christopher Ram called for the dismissal of Rutledge and I quote, for his serial misrepresentations and lack of transparency under his tenure, especially related to the questionable tax practices of Exxon in Guyana that is under scrutiny, as you recall, by 3 U.S. senators. Rutledge's claim, and this is what Mr. Ram was talking about. Imagine Rutledge was claiming that Exxon did not make any profit up to 2023, but it was pointed out by Mr. Ram, quoting from the Exxon's own audited financial statement, that Exxon actually made $132 million Guyana dollars in 2021 and $637 million dollars in 2022. Now, how um, could you miss that your own company that you had did not make any money when they're making hundreds of millions of dollars? That's a blatant lie, barefaced. Then Mr. Ram justifiably concluded that Mr. Rutledge has lost the confidence and respect of his host and should be dismissed for inexplicable behavior in Guyana. Guyana people, we have a proud tradition of or culture of show of kindness, warmth, and respect to visitors. But disappointingly, we find Mr. Rutledge to be at odds with these values, interpreting them to mean that we're weak, stupid, subservient, and inferior. We therefore join Mr. Ram in calling for the removal of Mr. Rutledge and call upon the government of Guyana as the client to demand his removal in the best interest of the nation. Um, and this is not only about what Mr. Ram reported. I'm gonna just quickly state a couple other incidents. The billboards, and we have spoken about the billboards several times in this AFC press conferences. Those billboards, Mr. Rogers put up those billboards telling the people of Guyana that we're getting 52% of the profit. That's a blatant lie. It is impossible. And I don't want to bore you with the math. It's going to take up some time. It's impossible for us to get 52%. We might be lucky to get, if all of the capital costs are paid off, we might be lucky to get maybe 35% total. So it's impossible to get 52%. And even Mr. Jagdio had agreed with me. I mean, it was mind-boggling that he even said in the press conference, I agreed with Vincent that it cannot be 52%, and he has not demanded that they remove the billboards. But anyway, so this latest propaganda stunt, now they've established, well, of course, the OGGA and the Oil and Gas Network, which comprise a team of high-powered intellectuals, highly qualified intellectuals that have been writing and criticizing them, that even met with the senators, that triggered the investigations by the senators. So now they're going after the diaspora in terms of spreading their propaganda. So they've got these series of meetings that they've planned in the United States. Special invitation, by the way, because I'm still waiting to get my invitation. But they had a meeting last week, I think, in New York, and Mr. I think Vikram reported in his report. Was it? I can't remember his name. I think it's Vikram. Yes, Mr. Vikram wrote a letter to the editor reporting of Vishnu Bishram. Sorry. So he reported in a meeting because he was there, and a question was asked, when will Guyana basically get that real 50% of profit? In other words, when will Exxon pay out their investment cost, which is their capital cost, so that that cost would go away? It's like your mortgage. Your mortgage is done. Your house is paid off free, and then we're going to be getting more money. Do you know what Rutledge said? Rutledge said will have paid most of our investments off next year. Now that's a most blatant lie. This man really believes that people are stupid. It's impossible. First of all, for the 6 projects that have been approved, it's a six. It's up to the tab is now 60 billion, and there's no ring fencing, meaning that these projects are not treated separately. And we've addressed this here before. So you've got to pay off that entire 60 billion in addition to the new investments, which is going to go close to 100 billion US dollars. So you got to pay that off. And this man is saying we will have paid off most of it by next year. And when you look at the total revenues that ever came, it was like 30 something billion. So that's another lie. But today we are asking, we're challenging Mr. Rutledge to show us those numbers, to show, since they've made it clear to the people that the people can expect more money next year, let him show us the math as to how they're going to get there with paying off all of that investment cost next year. We are asking, and we are asking the media to convey this question to Mr. Rutledge, to let him to show the people the numbers. The other thing is, he continues to disobey Guyana's law, bragging. This man continues to brag about breaking the laws of Guyana. I saw one headline here recently. Exxon vows to push production beyond oil ships' capacity on every ship, just by the words itself, without even knowing what all this means. To push production beyond our ship's capacity. That is breaking the law which is in the EIA, which he has similarly done in um, with dumping the water, the produced water, the toxic produced water into the ocean. The EIA says you got to re-inject it. Flaring the gas, the EIA said you should re-inject it. So he continues to violate and flout the laws of Guyana through greed, by the way, because they're upping the production rate. The EIA says the safe operating limit, it specifies the safe operating limit. So the EIA is saying one thing and they're doing something totally different. And nobody's paying attention. They're violating the laws on a daily basis. And you know what's so interesting about this? Even Mr. Jagdeo, the guy, he's even taking his past Jagdeo. Up to recently, Jagdeo says my highest priority is the gas energy project. Rogers the next day comes out to say, well, it's not mine. That is not my high priority. Jagdeo says the next day, Jagdeo says my highest priority is the local content. He comes out a day or two after, no, well, that's not our priority. But Jaglio is like a little mouse when it comes to Rutledge and Exxon. Could you imagine any one of us disagreeing with Jaglio on such important matter? Jaglio, like a little mouse, just brush it aside and say, well, it's just a little disagreement. Um, and the other thing is even the reserves as to how much oil do we have, meaning how much money do we as Guyanese have in the bank. We don't even know. What was interesting, a few months ago, I think it's early in this year, Mr. Barrett, the Minister of Natural Resources, comes out and says, oh, from the latest report we got from Exxon, the reserve has now gone from 11 to 11.6. Rutledge comes out the next day and said, no, it's still 11. And they're still quiet. Imagine, folks, imagine they were reporting after every discovery, they were reporting immediately you get a number. And the last report we had on the discovery was in April of 2022, 3 years ago. And that was when the 11 billion barrels was announced. Since then, they have had 24 more discoveries, 24. But you're not hearing anything. It's still a zero. And let me tell you why I believe it is. The discovery, I mean, not the discovery, the reserve is part of the calculation as to how much money they have to withdraw, for the decommissioning or the cleanup after production. So the bigger the number, the less, the bigger the number of the reserves, the less. For example, let's say that reserve is doubled to 22 billion barrels, then the amount of money that they would be withdrawing would be half. You see? So if they can keep it low, the amount of money they withdrawing for decommissioning would also increase by the same proportion. So again, we call upon Mr. Jagdio to stop this to call to request um, Exxon to room this man. He's not working in the best interest of the country, notwithstanding that he's taking his eyes past even Jagdew himself. And so we maintain that we call upon him to join Mr. Ram in calling for his removal. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vince Adams. Members of the media, we certainly recognize that we have not had an opportunity to meet with you for some time. And so therefore, we are willing, given the panel that's presented here, to answer any questions you may have on a range of topical issues. With that said, I'd like to suggest that we start our question and answer segment. If you would just use the raise hand function, identify yourself, and of course, as usual, the media organization that you represent. We will take the questions now. No questions? I see Adam. If anybody just wants to jump in.
My apologies there.
Well, good afternoon. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
Yeah, good afternoon. Interesting point by the EU. My question is, why do we expect anything different from the government when the government has failed to accept any recommendation that doesn't play according to its hymn sheet? Why do we believe that the government will accept the fact that it used state funds and it enjoyed lopsided coverage in the state media? Why do we think anything can be different?
Adam, if I could jump into that, I think that's precisely why the last line of my statement said that we have little confidence in any real change, that any real change would be made. But I would like to refer us to the Canadian High Commissioner's comments and request that Guyanese speak out in the interest of, making this an even stronger call, continuing the ongoing discussion on these issues. We have to have some change. And you're absolutely correct. And I think it's interesting when you have a member of the diplomatic corps that raises to Guyanese the need to speak out, to defend the democracy that we claim to have. So I don't know if
I
any of
mean,
my other
yeah,
colleagues would like
I,
to add.
Adam, it's our assessment that things are changing. You know, I mean, the PPP will be boastful on the results of the last elections, but we can see that things are changing in the sense that more and more people, just as Kathy is saying, are willing to speak out. And I'm not talking about politicians, I'm talking about ordinary persons. It cannot remain the same. What life and business in Guyana cannot remain the same. You know what I mean? For the last 5 years, persons have been complaining, saying that the cost of living, just for example, the cost of living is crippling. The PPP's response was, well, we're building roads and transformational infrastructure. And when that is finished, because of the roads, transportation costs will go down. Because of these parks, people will be happier. And that has not happened. So more and more you're seeing ordinary folks speaking out. I mean, and then so we do hope that this continues and it will translate to the the electoral reform. At some point in time, Adam, and I do think sooner rather than later, we will reach a tipping point. I do hope the government will take
Are
heed
we still on?
before we reach there, and so that that the country can move forward as a democracy.
If I can add to that, Kathy.
Please go ahead, Beverly.
Yes, in addition to the public support to make real meaningful changes to the electoral process, we would also welcome the partnership of the diplomatic community in helping to promote and advance and advocate for these changes. We've had the 2020 reports on the 2020 elections from the Carter Center, CARICOM, the EU mission. And again, we have these reports that definitely point to areas that can be improved. So apart from the Guyanese people who has the primary responsibility for advocating for change, we'd also welcome the support and advocacy of the international community. You know, heads of mission in Guyana can continue to voice the need for strengthening democracy, for making changes in the electoral system, for questioning advances on constitutional reform. You know, these are ways that our partners in the diplomatic community can help us as we build a real democratic nation. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Beverly. Can I ask if there are any other comments or questions?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I have one, and this is to Dr. Adams. Now, the United States says that it is paying close attention to operations by its foreign companies and all of that. And the Exxon books have to be audited and examined by the United States. Are we in a position to get copies of those audited accounts so that we could see the kind of lies, as you said, that Mr. Rochler is peddling?
Absolutely, Adam. Remember, and I think a lot of times people miss the fact that we own the oil and we own this contract. We have must have access to any information unless it's some kind of proprietary thing that was not developed in on the project, outside, but anything to do with the project, we have the authority and must have access to anything that we demand, except that we've got a government that is not only feckless, they're inept and doesn't even know what to ask for. Every single quarter, as per the contract, Adam, every quarter Exxon is required to give us a detailed financial accounting for every single barrel of oil. And nobody has ever seen any of those statements, those quarterly statements, to at least try to figure out what it is that Exxon is telling us. And I'm not even sure if the government has anybody even understands what they're telling us. So they probably just, the report comes in and they probably put it in some file, and Exxon goes out there and talks, give us a bunch of lies and misinformation. So we do not have, and by the way, Adam, we, meaning the past administration, this is exactly, we already had plans in place to make sure we had the expertise to go one-on-one with Exxon and to understand what they're telling us. We had plans to have people on board each of those ships 24/7 to see what they're doing, to look over their books, to count barrels, to make sure the meters are working. As soon as we left office, they abandoned all of that. But to get back to the gist of your question, absolutely. Any affairs, financial or otherwise, that is connected to this contract, be it with the United States or not, we have the authority to demand that we see any of that type of information.
Adam, Vince, allow me to expand on that. And it's not particularly in seeing Exxon books, but it's the whole global issue of our oil production, Adam. And it's unfortunate, saving except Christopher Ram, that we don't, as a country, as a nation, independently examine the Exxon and our whole oil production regime. It's reported recently that we are now producing 900,000 barrels a day. A year ago, it was 660,000 barrels a day. For the average Guyanese and for the average person, they would immediately fall to the assumption that with the increased 900,000 barrels a day that we're making a lot more money. That's not true. A year ago, the Brent crude oil was $80 a barrel. Now, just today, and on these calculations that I gave me was early on in the week when it was at $64 US a barrel. So in reality, what they at $64 US a barrel, we're actually only making $22 million extra a day from a year ago when we were at 600,000 and change. And this brings, I think, Vince and everybody else has been speaking about how we use our natural resource, our sovereignty fund, or the fund, natural resource fund, putting aside for a rainy day. So we are now at a point whereby oil is at $62 a barrel. We're not making, even though we ramped up production, we're not making that the same proportional increase in revenue. Is this possible with the geopolitical issues that are going on now that oil could drop even further? If that happens, what happens to all the projection, all the wanton spending that the PPP done, all the hundreds of millions of US dollar loans which they have taken out, which we have to service. So while the overall picture at a glance may look rosy because it is big now, 900,000 barrels per day, the reality as a country we're earning less, and that is why we have to address our natural resource fund. The PPP formula, they can take out 98% of it per annum. 98% of the monies in the natural resource fund, and they will have to do that to keep up with this pace in which they've been spending. No one has said to us how we intend to fund all these things that they said they will do. They want to do another catch grant, but literally we're earning less money than we should, based on the oil production and based on the price of oil. So the whole question of Exxon and their accounts and the country's stewardship has to be examined, and we just shouldn't take these numbers on face values to mean that we're better off. No, we're not really. We increased by 240,000 barrels per day, but we're making only $22 million profit as opposed to a year ago. So not drill baby drill doesn't necessarily translate to more money at all.
And let me quickly add there to what David, and that's important. But again, the Guyanese people, all of us, you see, we see Christopher Ram going out there and campaigning for transparency, but I don't think we realize how important it is. It is for us to understand what we have in our bank account. That is our bank account. It's our money. The government is just spending it willy-nilly. We have no control, even on the NRF board. There's not a single representative from the opposition. They deny that, even though they had agreed to it as force. So we do not know how much money is coming in, as David rightly said. We do not know how much money is going out. They're hiding that from us. And the more, even when we're begging, Christopher Ram is going out there and protesting with placards and everything else. But they just, even Nigel Hughes was there with him, and they just keep ignoring. And even further than that, you remember the audits that we've done, the audits that you do.
Yes, nothing we finalized as yet.
Nothing could be, and you know what the contract said? This thing, they use the sanctity of contract at their convenience. The sanctity of contract said that you should complete an audit, I think it's within 2 years of every start of every project. And until now, we still cannot get the finalization and any of these and then when the auditors go, Exxon is denying them access. Even imagine the auditor asks to see the meter, the oil meter that tells you how much. They're denying them that information. I mean, how could it get so ridiculous? But the government, the same Jack Leo who abused down everybody, he's got a big mouth for everybody else except for Exxon. He's sitting down like a little mouse and not telling, not demanding, because he has that authority. The things that they're doing, Rutledge and the folks are doing, they cannot even dare to think about it, not to do it, to think about doing those things in the United States of America, where Exxon belongs. But that, we've got a government, and a lot of times I really don't blame Exxon. I blame the government of Guyana because they're not standing up. When we were in power, we stood up, and Exxon was obliging with everything that we demanded they were doing. And as soon as we left office, they canceled all of that. So here, that's why Rutledge is so emboldened.
If I could just add to the conversation, I wanted to
After
say
you,
to
Kathy.
Adam too. Sorry, Bev.
No, after you, Kathy.
Okay. Adam, part of the problem too is, imagine at the highest level of scrutiny, the scrutiny that should take place in the Parliament of Guyana, that doesn't take place. You will recall that I was a member of the National Resource Committee, the parliamentary committee in the last parliament. And you would be amazed to be reminded the amount of times that committee invited Exxon, wanted Exxon to come, raised questions, brought to the committee questions from several citizens, organizations, individuals on these same issues. And the questions were not answered in a timely manner. The speaker did little or nothing. And of course, for more than 4 years, Exxon never answered the call to come to the Natural Resource Committee and to answer questions about how our resource is being utilized and the funds that are being earned from our own resource. So it's a sad day when Parliament itself is not scrutinizing. And as we all know, up to now, other than the first session of formality, Parliament has still not started. The committees are still not up and running. A leader of the opposition is not in place. And it is absolutely clear that the PPP does not think that this is anything, that Guyanese deserve exactly what we are getting. Beverly?
Just to add to all of that, Adam, I'm sure you went through the 2024 Auditor General's report, and you would have noted, as Kitro News did, that that petroleum unit in the GRA is just over half the complement of staff needed. So we don't even know as a people how many ways we're being shortchanged, much less to get down to how much we have been shortchanged. And so while you see Exxon ramping up and extracting as fast as they can, the government, on the other hand, when they have the responsibility to monitor and to ensure that Guyanese get their fair share, and as the Alliance for Change, we have been pushing for a fair share. The government has failed to provide and to put in place the mechanism to ensure that Guyanese get their fair share. We just don't even know how much we're losing through taxes. And that is an addition to what Dr. Vince and David and Kathy would have pointed out. And so it's a lot of failures in so many ways. There is so much more that Guyanese could be getting from our resources. I don't want to go into any conspiracy theory, but you have to look to see where collusion is taking place, that money is just being, willfully not being looked into and accounted for. Thanks, Kathy.
Hey, Kathy, let me jump in here quickly. Adam and the rest of the media that is present here, we're gonna give you a challenge in terms of a good starting point to get more information, is to go and request the quarterly financial statements and the field development plans. The quarterly financial statements, which supposed to document all of the financial transactions, where every barrel of oil and how much money comes in, how much is cost oil, how much is all the expenditures. For that report comes in, Jaguar first it pretty often, but I don't even know who's reading and interpreting it. The other thing is the field development plan that tells you all the details of the operations, how they're operating, what they're doing. That field development plan also has the planned budgets for every single item. That's where the cost comes out. When they say that this project is going to cost 9 or 10 billion, they have a list of every single item that is in that field development plan. I remember Jaglio, and I had written about it, when the questions were being asked, Jaglio even came out barefacedly and lied in one of his press conferences to say that since they came into office, they've published all of those field development plans. I've never seen such a barefaced lie. It's just as if nobody's going to go check. And then the next week he comes out and say, well, we can't send out because, well, maybe because he said we said the public wouldn't understand it. That's the kind of insulting statement that our leadership makes. They cannot publish it because the public cannot understand it. And I had to say he should stop judging people by his standard. He probably can't understand it, but don't judge other people by his ignorance. So again, please, Adam, I'm gonna hold you accountable here now, Adam. I will go and try to get the quarterly statements that Exxon provides every month, because every time you ask Exxon, that's been their patented excuse. Well, we submit the statements to the Guyana government. So ask for those financial statements and the field development plan for every single project. It's going to be an enlightening experience. And I think the entire media, there's a lot of material there for you to digest and to write about.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vince Adams. Last call. Any other questions
Yeah, just
or
one.
comments?
After
ahead,
then, I'm gonna
Adam. No, go ahead.
we have the courts, and some of these things are controlled by law. I know Terence Campbell has gone to court questioning the expenditure from the Natural Resource Fund, I think. And the ruling has been postponed from September to now December. But is there any other way that people can approach the courts to get answers to some of the very questions we were asking now?
Adam, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I want to use certain rulings and tell you that people have been approaching the court. You can remember the question on the liability, Justice Kisoon. That's on appeal, and that's over 2 years. The question on the EIA and the EPA granting of in Houston for a chemical plant, that there was a judgment there. People have gone to court on several issues, Adam. Unfortunately, I don't want to blame the judiciary, but they should also come into it. All of these cases that people have gone to court and won, the government has appealed. I mean, and the government, either the Attorney General himself or EPA, has appealed, and the courts grant them a stay of execution, and nothing happens. You know, I mean, we don't get any finality in it, no final resolution which we can use as a precedent to bring future further cases against them. So I think while it's a good recourse, the courts, I think our citizens, the independent citizens, are getting a bit wary on it. And then once again, you know, I mean, one of the cases I know pretty well, the question of prescriptive rights for compulsory acquiring persons' private property. They lost the case. They were on the verge of losing all the cases, and they went and they changed the law. So persons are a bit wary approaching it. I mean, they shouldn't discourage them. But our judiciary also has to step up, and after making a decision, if there's appeal, make sure that the appeal process is speedily completed. So if a person are so minded to go to CCJ for a final definitive ruling, they can. But unfortunately, the local appeal process has been slothful, and that allows the government to continue willy-nilly as they have.
The other thing, David, to add, the other thing is that we're dealing with an authoritarian government here. Imagine I don't know if you all got the information that Sandil Kisoon, who ruled in a liability case, has been now posted to Essequibo. Oh. So that's the kind of things that we're dealing with here. Yeah, this judge, because I think he made another decision, so now he's in Essequibo. And so who knows who else? These judges, it's intimidation. And then on top of that, we have no checks and balances, you know, with the 3 branches of government. Look, even in the Sandil Kisoon ruling, you know what they did? They went to Parliament and passed an oil spill law that basically cancels Judge Kisoon's ruling. So it doesn't matter, and even though I, you know, of course I'm not a lawyer, but it's going to be very interesting because the appeals case, I heard Nandalal saying, well, the appeals is coming up on the 24th, which is, you know, in a few days. But I don't care. It doesn't matter because to me anyway, the law in that oil spill bill that they passed with a 1-seat majority is going to override everything. That is the law. So it's going to be very interesting as to what that ruling, if ever it's ever going to have any impact. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with an authoritarian administration. It's a challenge.
Not to mention the cost of actually bringing some of these cases to to the courts, of course.
That's right. And Kathy, they've got this new thing now. If you bring a case, it doesn't matter what it is, they're finding you. They're penalizing you. Got to pay for the cost.
Yep. So the system currently, the way the government operates is that if you know what's good for you, keep your mouth shut.
Yep. Yeah.
And
let's
don't
not forget this recent railing in by the president on the ruling by Gino Prasad.
Yep.
So even the judiciary is, being
Yep.
threatened. Here is a
Yep.
judge given, his ruling, and no less than the head of state is going to condemn that ruling. So what does it say for the judicial process, for the members of the judiciary who are, doing their job? It's a very sad place that we're in as Guyanese, as a country.
Prasad might be joining Kisoon in Essequibo soon.
And that is why we keep losing talent. We keep losing our best and our brightest, because when they cannot practice their profession for they've worked so hard so many years, and then to be treated in that manner, with total disrespect. And you have even the Caribbean. These are people who can go any part of the world and immediately get a job. So when we treat our people like that, we're basically forcing them out of the country.
Okay, I think we're winding down. Any other questions to pose to the panel? I don't think so. So let me use this opportunity to thank everyone that has joined us this afternoon. Want to thank especially my presenters, Dr. Vince Adams, Beverly Alert, David Patterson, and of course, Laura George was on our chat today, on our press conference today. Thank you to the members of the media that also joined. We will be sharing this recording. And I want to say to members of the public, to all Guyanese, it's a weekend. Please be safe. We still have lots of accidents, lots getting speeding tickets. So be safe, and let's see you next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye,
Bye.
Kathy. There you go.